Ready to go?
Yep.
Good evening and welcome to the August 14th to 2025 meeting of the Minnetonka Economic Development Advisory Commission. The schedule and tentative agendas can be attained by calling the Community Development Department or checking the city website at minnetonkamn.gov. Copies of tonight's agenda and staff reports are on the podium outside these chambers. This meeting is televised and web streamed on the city's website. Listening devices are available upon request. If you wish to use a device, please see the city staff located outside the city council chambers in the audio-visual control room. From a broader standpoint, the EDAC attempts to find the balance between individual rights and community responsibilities as they make their recommendations to the city council. Individual rights are easy to understand. Community responsibilities are more subtle, but the idea is that we, as members of the community, agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The Community Development Department, the Economic Development Advisory Commission, and the City Council are responsible for managing this sometimes difficult balancing act. We ask you to keep the broader perspective in mind as we view tonight's subject matter. Before we begin, I just said this earlier, these phones have off buttons. Please make sure that your cell phone is turned off. Items on tonight's agenda include the 2026 to 2023 Economic Improvement Program and the staff report. So I think with that, roll call, please.
Anderson.
Here.
Connors. Here. Duginski Sabolka is excused today. Falk is excused. Haig.
Here.
Jin is excused today, and Ramaka.
Here. Hopefully everybody has had a chance to take a look at the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening?
Chair, no changes.
Thank you. Then with that, I would look for a moval to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you. Have an approval and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next meeting is approval of the minutes, but I don't think that we have the required commissioners here from the July 17th, 2025 meeting.
Chair, that's correct. We can push it to the next meeting if that works.
Okay, thank you. Let's table that to the next minute meeting. On to item number 5, which is always my favorite item that this commission takes on, which is the Economic Improvement Program. And it really is, because it really is the one thing that we have that kind of defines where the city's going over the course of the next 5 years. And it's updated every year, so it's a continual update from that standpoint. So I think with that, Alicia, you have updates for us relative to the Economic Improvement Program. And just kind of, before we did that, I just want to compliment staff, Ms. Gray, on the supplemental background report that we all received, because I thought that was extremely helpful as we took a look at it, and particularly as we kind of say what's been the progression and as to how this has moved forward. So thank you very much for that. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll get started here. This will be the final iteration at EDAC to review the EIP. So this will go to council, I think, next month, and for consideration for final approval. So as a review, as the chair mentioned, this document outlines all of the housing, economic development, transit, and redevelopment projects in the community. They're generally programs that, but for the city's funding, there wouldn't be a program. Of course, there are some exceptions to that. And then again, economic development, housing, business, redevelopment, transportation are all covered in this document under the scope of housing and economic development. There's other areas of the city that also address these topics as well. Moving on, the program policy. This document really outlines all of the items I mentioned previously, and kind of follows what our comprehensive plan guide is, and then also the various other documents in the city like the CIP and other programs in the other departments. So the schedule is in front of you here. So you can see the EDAC reviewed it back in March, back in May, and then it went to the City Council with your feedback on June 16th. And then today will be your final look through, and I'll give you the feedback from all those meetings at the end of the presentation here today. And then it'll go to the council on September 8th. So as an overview, these are generally speaking the funds that we have to pay for the programs that are within the EIP. So the development account is about $4 million balance. Livable Communities, which is primarily used to fund homes within reach, has about $673,000 committed. The Community Development Block Grant, which is now, we participate in a consolidated pool with the county. That's new as of July. The HRA levy, which is the, we generally in Minnetonka, it's been between $200,000 to $325,000 a year, and that funds various housing programs, so our housing loans, the Welcome to Minnetonka, Minnetonka Home Enhancement, the Pathways to Home Ownership, which is a newer program that we started a few years ago. And then also there's some business marketing for our outreach efforts. More recently, Emergency Business Assistance Program that the EDAC reviewed a few years ago. And then there was a 10-year commitment to Southwest LRT, and 2025 is the last payment for that. So the city's commitment for that is now finished. Some newer funds that haven't always been around is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that really came out of the COVID and pandemic, and a way to have set aside for housing specific needs. And originally that had started out as rental assistance when a lot of people during the pandemic were unable to pay their rent. We started the city council approved the trust fund, and that was a way for us, one of the only mechanisms for the city to provide rental assistance. So since then, there's been a few other funding sources that have gone into this account and funded various housing projects in Opus, the Mills Twin Home Commitment, and Amani Construction, and more recently, the council just approved an additional $200,000 for Pathways to get us through 2025. And that program's been so successful that it tends to run out of money pretty quickly. So that hopefully that $200,000 will get us through the winter, and then later on I'll talk about there is a request for the levy next year to continue to fund into 2026. So that's been a great program. And then LAHA is the state sales tax for cities, and that we just received our first payment in 2024, which was $321,000, and I just got an email a few weeks ago. Our 25 allocation will be $800,000. So it's a significant amount of money. It can be used for pretty much, there's a lot housing uses, generally speaking. It can't be used to replace funds for existing programs. So you can't take the $800,000 and replace the $300,000 levy amounts, but you can supplement it. You just can't remove the HRA funding and replace it with the LAHA. So we're still learning. There's been a lot of webinars and various housing organizations kind of sorting through the regulations on LAHA and trying to help cities understand exactly how the funds can be used. But there's a lot of reporting requirements tied to that funding that's making it kind of tricky to navigate. So we're going to those webinars and doing the work to figure out what those things are.
Can I ask, so like for pathways where they're highly successful program, highly sought after program, we could supplement and add some of those LAHA dollars to help fund additional pathways?
Chair, yes, technically you could. However, we're trying to understand the reporting requirements because they seem to be very difficult for programs where you're just giving one loan or assistance to a single household for long-term tracking, because I think it's also recoverable and then you have to keep tracking it year over year over year. So I think the guidance that I'm thinking for these funds is to provide them to one larger project. So like a larger redevelopment project that wants to do affordable units, that would be a quick way to expend the funds, get the affordable units, but not have more of those long-term reporting requirements that are very technical. So that's the thought on that.
And we seem to have plenty of opportunities for just that use of funds, and particularly as we see more affordable housing projects and more housing projects come to light.
Yeah, and Chair, clearly there's a lot of opportunities. We talk about it in the EIP, just new ways of looking at providing housing, whether it's affordable homeownership, rental, we're looking into manufactured housing and a lot of different things that we've not done in the past. So this is great to have these funds available for being a little bit more creative than in the future. So it's great. So within the housing chapter, the total for the 5-year programs is $1.675 million. And this is a breakout of those programs. It's pretty standard. The last couple of years, the funding recommendations have been pretty consistent. So within there, $50,000 for the 2 programs the city's had to continue those. Pathways is the only outlier in the sense that instead of funding homes within reach at $100,000, staff is proposing the $175 for pathways through the HRA levy. And then we continue to have homeless response and then emergency rental assistance as well. So in that supplemental background report, it gives a good overview of how many households we're serving a year with those various programs. And the 175 has been proposed since the March meeting, and it hasn't wavered. I haven't gotten any feedback otherwise. So it's continued on in the various drafts of the EIP.
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for the Homes Within Reach program, the funding was 2026 estimated for 25. It was 25,000, and then it is rising for 2027 to 125,000. Can you remind me why that was? I think we had.
Chair, Commissioner, there's various support for Homes Within Reach throughout the years. So this year, the recommendation was to continue on with the organizational support of $25,000. So that doesn't go towards buying new homes. And the reason for that is that they have a pretty significant balance right now, and they haven't been able to acquire any homes because there haven't been homes coming on the market that are within their price range that they can acquire. But we're hoping in the future, in the next couple of years, that there'll be some additional homes available.
Chair.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair, if I may. Yeah, so Alicia is capturing it right. And we also had a discussion on this body as well, that because they're, first of all, the homes are so expensive, we weren't considering the other programs we have for affordable home ownership. We were looking for bang for our buck, and there's not the inventory right now, so we wanted to, at least for this year, redirect so that we could keep those opportunities going for owned, affordable opportunities.
Thank you.
Is there any thought relative to homes within reach going forward? And again, I kind of look myself from the standpoint of programs that are underutilized or maybe less successful at a particular point in time, transferring some of those dollars for future years from homes within reach to partnership or pathways to home ownership. I think, and maybe that's something that we do when the time comes appropriately. But from my standpoint, the recommendation looking at it going forward would be to say, why are we jumping that back up? Let's put the money where it's being utilized.
Chair, thank you. The programs serve they're different. So, I think that you might be able to get deeper affordability on a certain level because of the land trust model of homes within reach, and that allows more families to move in if we can find the inventory. So it's almost an apples and oranges comparison because the outcomes are different. There is more equity that you can get from the Pathways program, as I understand it, but we do help, bring down the cost with the down payment, and but it really is just such a different model that it just kind of serves a different purpose. There's one council member who lives in a homes within reach home and is not a fan of the model, but it has served an incredible purpose, and we do have 63 homes here, and it does give people a chance to live in single-family homes in Minnetonka. So, I think we're all thinking about, where best to put limited resources, but I also feel like they're different enough programs that there might be a compelling reason to do both, but I think it's something that we should discuss and sort of crack the nut and figure out if that's true.
It does seem as if the disparity between the cost to acquire and what their model allows is only going to widen over time, is not going to narrow. As we see housing prices go up, so from that standpoint, either something has to change within the model, because the market doesn't appear to be prepared to provide any ease of making it more accessible.
Chair, if I could add, homes within reach has to get permission from the city to purchase a home, and there have been a few this year that they've put forward, but they just weren't a good fit. Some of them, the condition of the work that was done prior to the sale was an issue. There's various things that come up. If one is too close to a previous location, we look at them on a map and say, there's another home right across the street, so let's try and be equitable across the city on where the homes are located. So there's a number of factors that also go into whether or not property is selected to be in the program.
My suggestion to this commission would be, in future years, when I'm no longer on the commission, to take a look at those dollars and say, is this the proper allocation of dollars between the pool of what is highest priority for us in our housing programs.
Right. Moving on, I'm just have a summary slide here for you. So as I mentioned earlier, for the HRA levy, we've discussed in previous meetings, continuing to fund the down payment programs, the Pathways program at $175, and then the Homes Within Reach continued contribution. In terms of things that we're anticipating with the trust fund, we are always looking for ways to preserve affordable housing. So as those come to our the forefront, we have a pool of funding to be able to assist with whatever that might be. It might be a rehab situation where if we give them money, they will maintain affordability or make more units affordable. So those are the types of things we're looking at. Also, quite frequently, we'll get calls from residents asking us to buy their homes for various reasons. Sometimes they're a good fit and other times they aren't. So this is a fund that we can utilize that for. And that's the case with the Belmont property and Welland. So we are working on our due diligence items with those two properties to survey and make sure, kind of get a understanding of what we have to work with there, and then we're exploring the manufactured homes on one or all or some of those sites. We're trying to figure out which one would be the best fit for a first iteration of a manufactured home. And then I mentioned the Pathways was funded at $200,000, so that'll get us through this year. And then on other housing initiatives, Kendall presented the encampment policy at the study session last month. We got feedback on that, so that'll come back soon to council. The zone co-process is in process, so the zoning rewrite, and Susan Thomas and our city planner is working through that. And then I believe there's an update going to council in September at a study session on the zoning process. Rental registry program's going well. I know we provide a lot of information on that. There's a big update at the housing study session just recently. We've got a lot of people registered through that now, so it's been a great effort. We also presented a legacy housing resource guide at the study session. So the idea of that is working with individual homeowners and property managers to either preserve their housing long-term for affordability or help them with tools or assist them with covenants and various things to help them do that. So we're putting it out there in hopes that some residents will step forward and inquire about that so we can start looking into that a little bit further. And then I wanted to mention, I don't know if you recall that during the Vail negotiations, so the new building that opened up on 394, the dorm project, in the negotiations we had them add a transitional housing unit. So that's really a unit that's being managed by his house to house a household that can't get into another option. So Doran agreed to do this, and through his house they'll work to place it's a 3-bedroom, so it's probably going to be more than one person into the unit. And that building just opened in July, and I think his house just got the lease signed and all of that. So pretty soon it's likely that that unit will be occupied. So it's kind of a unique situation. No other city's ever done it before, but I was like, we have a need for this. Let's try and figure it out. So we'll report back when we know more on that situation.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And also, we didn't know that the other night. But thank you.
And then kudos to Kendall and on this housing grant for rental assistance. We received $150,000 to boost our efforts there. So yay, kudos. So that will help us immensely as we continue to provide those resources. All right, that's the end of the housing chapter. Any questions?
Sure. Just wanted to add or ask a question about any type of ongoing measurements we have. To your point, Chair Hamaka, is there a reason or is there a current kind of dashboard that shows utilization over time of the different programs, or just something that allows us to track forward and backwards in time what's been working, what's been most useful, most utilized?
Chair Commissioner Haig, yes, we've recently developed a housing dashboard for that very purpose, and it's more internal facing now, but in the near future, we're hoping to make it external. We kind of had to work through the details of getting it set up, and but we've been using that as a resource. And then I think there's maybe a larger citywide initiative coming through to track things citywide. So I'd assume that our programs would also be included in those efforts. But that's at a higher leadership level.
Mr. Chair and Elise, anybody, this is a question for staff. So for that grant that we just wrote, do we have to use it in a certain amount of time, or is it open-ended?
Yes, it does need to be used in a certain amount of time. There is going to be a webinar to have all of the explanation from the state on kind of all the program details. We're going to one in September to go through those details and finalize anything that we need to before contracts, the agreements are signed and all of that. But yes, I believe it's 3 years is what I believe it is. So it has to be spent within those 3 years. But again, we'll get more information about that timeline when we go to that webinar. And this was a one-time funding through Minnesota Housing. They had some excess funds, and this was the use that they decided. So everyone was applying for the same program. So that's my understanding.
Then to the team relative to getting that done, because that's even a bigger feather in your cap, and for the city, and for helping make rental housing more affordable in the city.
All right, moving on to the business chapter. This one continues to grow, which is great. Originally, 9 years ago, we didn't have as many of the programs as we do today, which is a great step forward in helping our business community. So we have roughly 585,000, so not quite as much as the housing programs, but it's getting there. We have our continued contribution to Greater MSP for regional economic development. We continue to have great success with our business advisory services, and I think Kirsten will go over some of those details a little bit later in the staff report. But that's been a great tool, the Elevate Hennepin and the MCCD programs for entrepreneurs that are looking to get started, and then also people who they're really expanding on first, second stage, third stage, all these different stages of business ownership and what that looks like, and partnering business leaders with different businesses around the community to give them some mentorship and help them out with what they need. So it's kind of cool learning about all these new efforts. Since Kirsten's been on board, we've been doing a lot more with outreach. We continue to publish Thrive, and our numbers are up on the subscribers for that. And then Kirsten's been out doing some canvassing in our local business areas. So, and not only just her going out, but she's gone out with other city staff so that they can pool their resources and provide kind of a whole bunch of information instead of just having one person going out and meeting with the businesses. And then we have greater participation in the chambers now. So Kirsten's been leading those efforts and subject matters at those meetings throughout the year. The SAC and REC program, we still get a lot of inquiries from new businesses. So this is a lot of startups. They may be like a restaurant or a salon trying to move into a commercial space that isn't set up for what they're trying to do, and then the Met Council says, well, you have to pay this fee now, and they're like, I can't pay it, it's too expensive, and that's what this program is for. So we've had, I think we currently have, 10 businesses in the program. So over the years, they're typically 10 to 15-year loans, if I remember right. So it's a way for them to defer those costs over time. And then the emergency business assistance and commercial code compliance are newer programs, and a little bit of utilization on that, but they're really meant to be for those emergencies that come up. So commercial code could be an inspector notices that something isn't compliant, like a hood or something in a restaurant. This would be an opportunity to fund that at some level to help the business out. And I know one of them was a sewer repair that has utilized this program. So for those emergencies that come up. So on our initiatives for 2025 and 26, continuing to connect with those partner organizations. Kirsten's been really great at going out and meeting with all these organizations and finding out what they're doing and how they can help Minnetonka businesses. We're constantly bugging our communications people to send out information to our business community, either through our Thrive email list and then also through our just different social media channels, and then also sometimes through the memo. If we can get something in the memo, it's a great day. So there's a lot of information to get out. Strengthening Thrive, so we're always looking for opportunities. It is a lot of work to put those stories together, so we feel like 3 times a year has been a good amount without going a little bit overboard, because if you send out too much, then people stop reading it. So that's kind of our thought on that. We're working through our contacts at large corporations. We completed the market analysis earlier this year, and we've been using that information when it comes to our office space. So when brokers are calling looking for various office space, we know exactly where those spaces are and can connect folks to those. We've also been coordinating with our sustainability coordinator to go out and canvas with our businesses and promote those efforts from that standpoint. And then the quarterly business meetings, Kirsten's been instrumental in providing the subject matters for those. And then just our Elevate Hennepin continues to grow. We don't have 2025 numbers yet, but we are getting a lot of use out of that program. And that's what I have for business chapter. Any questions?
Chair, there was Leatherman Communications came in and did their presentation to us about businesses and their feedback, and it seemed overwhelmingly positive, and it generally was. I think one bit of feedback I had, I'm not sure if we can incorporate it or if it's just a kind of a thought thing to go forward with, but oversampling newer businesses that don't have as much of an established presence, just because there's a bit of survivorship bias when we talk to the majority of businesses. They've been here for a long time, they're successful, understanding what the needs for a newer business would be given trying to establish themselves in the current economic conditions. So just something to keep in mind.
Chair, I just want to add, I think this is really great that our city government and our economic development focus to see the level of outreach and proactive work being done, I know is really a positive thing and is going to improve our small business community and strengthen it. So I just want to say thank you and encourage you with this great work. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to transit chapter. This is our lighter chapter, as much of the funding for transit doesn't flow through the city. It's through motor vehicle sales tax and Met Council, Met Transit, and yeah, so there's not a lot here, but we do participate in commuter services. So that's trying to get people to ride together in various different ways, or bike, or get to work in a way other than just in their car alone. So we do participate in that, and we push out the information that we learn through this initiative. Maybe a note on this is that the contract for Metro Transit was extended in July of this year. So it's been a little bit of a back and forth with Metro Transit over the years, because LRT was going to open originally in I think it was 2023 when they were going to open originally, and now we're at 2027. So a lot of the more recent contract negotiations were just to extend to get to opening day, so we can figure out how to serve getting people to light rail. So that's still in the works. We just went through our big transit study and network next, now. Network Next is coming next. Network Now with Metro Transit, so looking at how to improve services, and we shared that report earlier this year, so we're working through some of those efforts. So that's what that looks like. So between the Nelson Nygaard and the other study, some of the feedback was to work on last mile connections and microtransit, which we've been in communication with Metro Transit trying to figure out what that looks like. Connections to Opus Station and Shady Oak Station, and then cross connector routes. So those would be things like getting people from Ridgedale down to Opus and likewise. And then we continue to build out new trail connections through our work and redevelopment and through our park planning. And we're going to be meeting with Southwest Transit and Plymouth in the near future to just see what's new with them. Is there anything we can partner on, or what are some opportunities there that maybe we hadn't thought about or talked about recently? So we'll be doing that in the next month or so. And that's what I have for transit. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I actually have a question, but it actually is in the next section, but it talks about on page 32 as paginated, and 35 as you scroll. It says, it is anticipated that due to limited county, regional, and state resources, as well as competition for these resources, the city will need to provide resources to assist in redevelopment in the LRT station areas. So, so this has to do with the next, but does this have anything to do with cost overruns with the LRT, or is this just part of the redevelopment, sort of the transit-oriented redevelopment around the LRT station?
Chair, Councilmember Calvert, this is primarily noting that the city will be involved in some ways, and you've seen a lot of this in Opus with all the road reconstruction and trail reconstruction. As they wrap up with the work around LRT, and likely change this page to reflect some different language, but that's what it's touching on.
Thank you.
And there was a fairly substantial contribution of that $75,000 a year.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the redevelopment chapter. So this chapter is really kind of tracking the funds that we use to do our studies and our different plans, like the commercial market analysis, the visitor surveys, the business survey, TIF analysis, so that we can get our analysis done before we come to the board with informed decisions. So this is the primarily activities that are funded out of the development fund for that purpose. And then, from time to time, there are a plethora of various grants. So it could be through the state, the county, not so much federal funding. We don't typically have federal funds aside from CDBG for housing and redevelopment, but all of those funds typically will flow through the development fund for its various purpose. We've had cleanup grants, job creation fund, Minnesota Investment Fund, all sorts of different types of programs that have run through here. So with that,
I have just a question
go ahead.
on that before we move forward. So $175,000 out of the development fund is what we have for 2026 in the economic improvement plan. And those are pre-development expenses and studies, plans, and research. Are those, and I guess this also falls for the TIF districts, are those outside costs, or are those internal costs that we're allocating funds for that purpose?
Chair, Commissioners, it's a little bit of both. Some of the studies that are conducted to inform like a tax increment request would, if we get to a point where there's a contract, there's a clause in there that they have to pay for a certain amount of administrative expenses. So just recently on March 3, that was $25,000. So those dollars will be expended from the development fund and then repaid by the developer. And then other times when we're doing, let's say, the village center studies, or we have to hire a consultant to look into something, typically those are not coming back to the fund in that way. So it's a little bit of both. This is committing dollars that are currently in the, it's kind of an estimation. We don't always use $100,000 of funding through this program, but that's what we're anticipating each year as we move forward with various projects. So it's a little bit of both, I guess, is my answer on that one.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to just do a couple slides on the various feedback from not only the EDAC but also the council meeting. So just to like refresh our memories and then see if it kind of spurs any additional feedback regarding the EIP for when it goes to council next month. So some high-level comments from March 20th and May 28th from the EDAC. There was a question about federal funding and how that's impacting the public service agencies. And Kirsten called around and got a good gut check from the various nonprofits that serve the community and presented that information. I believe it was in the EIP. I believe it came to the EDAC, but it was also in the council packet for the study session. And basically, it was across the board. The different, some were concerned and others weren't, and it depended what type of agency it was. So we'll continue to kind of keep tabs on what's going on, but a lot of the major concerns were for seniors and their funding, and then SNAP benefits. Specifically were noted in the feedback that we received. And it's hard to say when we don't know what's coming down the road, but we'll continue to check in if we hear of anything. Elevate Hennepin. So there was a question about whether any funding was available to businesses participating in Elevate Hennepin. And they're actually new this year. There are 2 new programs. Do you know, Kirsten, basically what they offer? I know their wording on their website is a little tricky to navigate.
Yeah, they have 2 new loan programs. I was actually planning on talking about it during the business section. I don't know if you want to skip ahead or hang tight, but they have 2 different loans. They're both being administered through Next Stage. One is, I believe, general operations, and the other is specifically to help I believe slightly more established businesses purchase their own property.
Thank you. And do you want to explain maybe what Next Stage is? Because I don't think we've talked about Next Stage at the commission.
Sure, yeah. Next Stage is a newer entity. It's run by Lee Hall, who used to be involved with the what is now known as the Minnesota Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers. It used to be Metropolitan. Now, as of this year, it's now Minnesota. And they offer low barrier financing opportunity for businesses.
Thank you.
Don't have to elaborate more.
It's just a new phrase, and I didn't know if we've talked about it here in the past.
Yes.
Okay, so then pathways to home ownership. We talked about the support for additional funding, and there was, and then the council approved it, so that was great. And so we'll get through this year, and then hopefully have some funds for next year. And then we added to the Village Center page, revisiting those efforts, and it is something that we do as part of our comp planning efforts. So we're going to talk internally and figure out which studies were done, are they still relevant, which areas do we want to focus on in the future. So we plan to revisit that. And some of that work is actually being done through these visitor studies that we're doing, which is telling us where people are coming from. You know, it's really kind of creepy that they track your cell phone data and know where you're coming and going and where you're spending your money and all this stuff. But it's actually very helpful. We've even used it for park planning, so it's really interesting. Going to next to the city council meeting on June 16th. This was really that was the EIP session. The council approved the pathways. There was a question about whether or not there were prepayments on pathways, and because the program is so new, it wouldn't be very likely. It wouldn't that someone would buy a home and then sell it within a year. So we actually haven't had any prepayments. So that I think that's good because it represents stable home ownership. We know that the program's working and people are able to sustain their housing.
Quick question.
Go
How
ahead.
do we track if there is a turn in one of those houses where pathways was used? How do we track that and know?
Chair Commissioners, there is a recorded document, loan document. So it'll get flagged and they have to come
So
to the
there's
city.
essentially a second mortgage that we're filing on the
Correct.
property? Okay, thank you.
On homes within reach, there's always questions about, you know, why haven't they been able to purchase homes? I think we touched on that a little bit earlier in the meeting. And then there was a question if the $7,500 loan program is still available, and that was actually some pooled CDBG from years ago that we needed to spend down, and that program ended in September of 2024. However, there are numerous repair programs out there that the homes within reach households can apply for. So it wasn't that this was the only thing available, but this was specific to homes within reach, and it was open for 3 years, and there were 25 recipients of the 63 during that time. So just wanted to clarify that. And then there were some other topics that came up at the study session. It was there was a question about social housing and thinking about that at the legislature. And then the condo warranty continues to be an issue. It prevents new construction, or from developers don't want to construct condos because of this law. So trying to track that at the legislature and figure out if there's going to be any movement on that. And then on the business side, continuing to explore non-traditional ways to connect with the business community. So that was brought up, like bulletin boards, religious organizations, any way that we may be out and can just post things where people are, which is tricky, but we'll look into that a little bit further. And then on July 21st, we also talked about our homeless encampment policy. So we went through the draft document. There was some conversation on whether or not 72 hours after we've completed all our outreach and resources from the staff side is enough time for folks to vacate the site. So we're going to do a little bit more research on that. Some of the policies and ordinances had shorter time frames depending on the exact location. So if it was like a high use area of public use, such as like parks or schools, or even at a city hall, there would be a requirement that you would have to vacate sooner because it's, you know, there's a lot of different reasons within that. But so we're going to spend a little bit more effort looking into that. And then there was a lot of consensus to consider legal enforcement as a last resort after all these other efforts are considered, that are outlaid in the policy or ordinance. And then we talked about our legacy housing initiative. So that was, I touched on that a little bit earlier. And then gave an update on the rental registry program. And there was a question that came up about short-term rentals, so I think we're going to spend a little time looking at those. We don't have a lot in Minnetonka, but a lot of communities have chosen to ban them completely, so we'll do a little bit of research around that. So with that, this is my last slide, and it just summarizes kind of what we talked about here tonight. And what I'm looking for today or tonight is any additional direction or recommendations to provide the council when we meet with them next month at their meeting.
I'm sorry, I have a couple of questions, some of them that I got answered already, but when I'm digging a little bit further back in the packet that was sent to us, and I'm kind of in the source of revenues and expenditures for the various different funds. The development fund starts out healthy in 2026 and then goes negative and grows negative. Can you explain that to me as to how we have a forecasted negative fund balance in that fund?
Chair, the fund, let me get to that page first.
I think it's page 76, which would be 51 on the...
Okay. Chair, Commissioners, I believe this is because we have an existing fund balance beginning at $4 million. A lot of that funding is committed through various inter-fund loans and things that are tied up in TIF, are various studies and things that we're doing. There's not a lot of revenue that comes in there. Basically, Cedar Ridge assessments, Cloud9 admin, interest income, TIF admin rolls into this. But eventually, the fund will run out of funding in the next 10 years. And it's hard to display it in the way that this software works because of the fact that it doesn't really allow you to show funds that are previously committed. So it just runs down to a negative over time.
Okay.
It's the best I can do for trying to display future use of the funds, but it doesn't actually allow you to show what's been committed. And I tried to do that at the bottom, showing like the Opus TIF loan and some of those other items that were noted below. So yes, it's not a fund that continues to have revenue, and eventually it will run dry and run out of money if it's not continually funded with another source. But for now, some of those commitments are loans that will be repaid or through TIF or various, there's another loan for Cedar Ridge, so there are some future revenues that may come through here, but that's why it goes negative.
Okay. The other one was the Livable Communities Fund. There looks like there was an alpha character that was in there that I was just trying to figure out. It kind of didn't make any sense when I looked at that because of that. That's like page 79.
I'll take a look. Sometimes PDF conversion does weird things to numbers. I'll take a look at that. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I actually have a question along the same lines that you did on the same page. So in the revenues and other fund sources where it has Cedar Ridge assessments and Cloud9, I know that we also have another HIA, which I assume kind of fits into the same category. Is it just not in there because it hasn't quite?
Correct. We won't know what the payback is going to be until the bonds are issued and what the repayment schedule will look like for that. Yep.
And that's for Chasewood Gates?
Okay, I will take a look at those pages and update them before they go to council, but the Chasewood is just due to the fact that they don't have their project costs in yet. Those aren't due till next month, so we won't know what those repayments will be until we know what the project costs are.
And my one last comment was kind of a compliment. When we were looking at, it's further on page 87 of the PDF, and it's affordable housing goals. I thought that the next 3 or 4 pages were incredibly helpful as we look at kind of the but-for mentality of why we do projects. And so basically showing, affordable housing goals and kind of listing out the units that have been included in and that we've had part of to create both affordable and lifestyle or life cycle units. So I thought that was really nice to see, and it kind of gives us a perspective as to, okay, when we do a project like Marsh 2 or whatever, how does it fit in? How is it paid for? And the number of units that are there. So that I thought that was very helpful. And then on page 90, the 3 tables on page 90 I thought were some of the best that we've had as far as explaining AMI and that adjusted mean income as far as what a salary, who would, kind of what a median salary is, how that person would fall into the table as far as, 30% to 100% of AMI, and kind of what they can afford. I thought that in particular, whoever put that together, I wanted to compliment, because it kind of tied up a lot of loose ends for me as far as how I was looking at that in the future. So that was extremely beneficial, I thought.
Thank you.
Chair?
Yes.
Just on one of the items, development and redevelopment, sort of kind of on that bucket, talking about the scattered site residential commercial properties, and I wasn't aware there was a city's land management committee. Is that made up of staff or?
Yep, Chair Commissioner Haig. Julie's on the committee and various other staff members from our leadership group, and they meet, I think, once a month to discuss these requests that come in for various deals. And they're not always for affordable housing. They could be for utility or public works or parks. I mean, there's a whole plethora of properties out there that either the city owns for various purposes, or people that are asking the city to purchase a property for various reasons, or easements, or that type of thing.
Okay, because I was just kind of generally wondering if that's publicly available in some sort of like a database, or if people wanted to know like what there is out there, because there's groups that are, this is not economic development, but there are conservation groups that would be interested in maintaining and preserving some of the areas that may not be suitable for development or redevelopment. And there are areas that might be, and if people knew there was something out there for them to find an interest in, they might find a way to acquire it or support the city in using it. So it's just more of kind of an access, transparency, accessibility piece to that.
Chair Commissioner, there is the Hennepin County website notes whether it's city-owned. There's quite a few. I want to say there's like 100. There's a list somewhere of the ones that the city actually owns. The ones that are, the handful that are for housing purposes, I have a list, but it's not really public. It's a list with a handful of properties. I'm trying to think how to best, I can follow up with Julie because she's more involved in that committee, but typically, I mean, it's publicly available through the city's mapping services and then through the county of what the city owns. And there's every time someone calls and like, the city owns this property, can I use it for this? There's always a reason why we own it. And someone, whether it's in public works or planning, knows what that is. So I can look into that. Yeah.
I recognize we don't just have a bunch of valuable property sitting away on our books for no reason, but yeah, I've had enough people ask me over the years, like, what this piece of property, do you know what this is? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Julie or someone else on staff does, and it's probably a reasonably smart thing we're doing with it.
Sure. Another thing I'm just thinking through is that, like, the 101 property, for example, is probably still on the planning page because we went through a whole effort on outreach on that site, and then COVID hit, and then it kind of fell apart. Nobody wanted to do that project at the time. So there's properties like that, which it had an intended use for housing, and it'll come through again once we get some interest in someone doing something on that site. But that would be on the city website because there was a lot of conversation around that at the time. So it's out there, but
Any of the other commissioners have any other questions relative to the economic improvement program? If not, Alicia, what action item are you looking for from us? Are you looking for a recommendation from the commissioners relative to the city council action?
Chair, yes. I think it's helpful for the council to get a recommendation on the HRA levy, which I have on the screen here, and I will note the various comments and suggestions that it received tonight.
Then I would entertain a motion relative to a recommendation to the city council relative to the HRA levy for 2026.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded?
So we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All right, do you want to take a roll call on that?
Yep. Anderson?
Yes.
Motion. Connors?
Yes.
Haig?
Yes.
And Ramatka?
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
And then I think lastly, other than that, I think there would be, I'd entertain a motion relative to our approval of the economic development program with that levy to the city council for their review.
Chair, is that a approval and recommendation or just an approval?
It's a recommendation from the Economic Development Advisory Commission to present it to the city council as it was presented tonight.
With a few edits, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion, we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's it for the economic improvement program. Thank you.
Thank
We did
you.
We did that in an hour. That's pretty amazing.
I've gotten very good at summarizing it. No, we used to go through every single page, if we remember right.
Oh.
That
Yeah,
got
that
out
was-
to be a little long.
I had told my wife, I said, this is going to be a late one tonight because we're going through the EIP. So appreciate that.
All right, with this one, we have a couple staff updates, so I'll turn this one over to Kirsten.
Thank you. So for transit, main thing with the Metro Green Line light rail extension is that they are going to begin testing the line. So yes, big deal. We're still told that the opening date will be in 2027. And so beginning this fall and then continuing throughout next year, it will seem as if the line is actually active and people can ride it because they will be testing it as such. So the lights will be active, the gates will be active. Those are not just for show. There actually will be test cars running down them. So our understanding is that they're going to be doing public outreach to inform people that they do need to take the light rail safety seriously at this point in time. Other than that, of course, most of the construction work at this point in time in Minnetonka at least is all confined to the electrical, the mechanical things on the line itself, with the exception that there is going to be a few lane restrictions in September that should take a week or two. And that's about it for light rail. Yeah, thank you, Alicia.
This is Julie's slide typically, but I'll give it my best. Marsh Run 2. This is the Vale, which just opened. We went to the grand opening a couple weeks ago here. That's a photo from the pool deck, so you can see kind of what that looks like there. It's complete, and it was half leased already within a few weeks, so that's pretty impressive. The finishes inside are great. It looks amazing, so it's a really cool project. It's kind of fun for staff to see the different iterations of Doran's projects and how they differentiate from each other. It's pretty cool. They have a really good designer that they work with. On city-owned properties, so on Amani is trying...
And just can I...
Oh, yep, go ahead.
So this, again, this table, extremely helpful. So in Marsh 2, there are 40 affordable units as part of that project in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really impressive from that standpoint.
On Roland Road, that's Amani's site, they were so close to closing a couple weeks ago, but they got a little tied up with the watershed district and some of the requirements. So I'm hoping in the next week or two they'll be able to close on that and start construction on the twin home. So keeping my fingers crossed. On Greco, that's under construction. That is the senior building and memory care that's south of Carlson Towers, kind of tucked in that neighborhood there. Minnetonka Mills, they submitted their plans. They're just under review right now. Gray Star, fully under construction. And then Amira Villas is the townhome project right by Carlson Towers. And we've heard that all of the units are pre-leased and they're like $6,000 to $7,000 a month for rent. So very not attainable for most people. But there's a demand for it, so it's great that they were able to rent them. Chasewood Villas, that's underway. They're trying to wrap that up here in the next couple months. Government Center has a little bit of work going on. Clear Springs Elementary, I drive by it every day. They have lots of equipment out there doing work out there. Walzer Kia, we went out on our tour and the ramp is complete and we talked about the various difficulties on that site. Wells Fargo phase 1 is nearly complete, which is the bank, and phase 2 will begin later this year. I think there's a couple restaurant pads in there that'll go in, so we'll see what comes to town. And then Barnes and Noble is moving locations, and I've also heard rumors of Marshall's moving as well, so to a bigger location. So stay tuned on that. And I did see that there's a big advertisement in the mall for the Lego store, so that is a great addition for anyone who has children.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if there is anything in place for replacing the former bookstore space? Have we heard of anybody who's moving in?
Possibly.
Okay. I don't know if it's public yet, but...
Not yet, but yes. There's also, we've been in conversations on some other sites around town too that we just aren't public yet. So there's movement out there.
That's
Things
great
are
to hear. It's a
filling in.
significant size space, and so I know that's probably attractive to certain businesses. So excited to hear that get turned over.
Through the commercial market analysis, we have a pretty good handle on how much commercial space or retail space is available, and it's not very much, actually, for the size of the community. Just that the spaces are rather large, so we're probably going to see some sectioning off of some of those in the future.
Perfect. Housing updates. It's my turn. We've talked about a few of these already through the EIP discussion, but the rental registration program continues to be successful. We continue to have more registered units throughout the city. As of 2025, we have just for 2025 new registrations, there's 197, so those are new people within only the first 8 months of the year who have registered their properties, and we also have more and more renewals happening since that's an annual renewal process. So all the people through doing their annual renewals throughout the year from 2024. So we're going through that process of doing that renewal, and so far it's been successful, and we continue to update the form to make it easier for everybody. So we just did a big update to that form for renewals going forward, especially so that there's now a new autofill process, since we do have people who own a lot of properties and it's a lot of information to input every single year. So yeah, so we're trying to do some quality of life fixes as we go and as we give feedback from the community as well. So that's going strong. Looking at homelessness, I don't even know if we should call it a pilot program in our presentations anymore. It's been going on for a couple of years now, but it continues to be successful. There's a lot of outreach happening with His House Foundation. As of June of this year, the number that we received from His House of kind of this outreach support that they've been doing has been about 53 households, around 102 residents, and they have some, I believe the breakdown of some of that is in that supplemental report that was from the EIP of where they're getting some of those referrals. A lot of them are from the police department and also from the Minnetonka School District as well. And so, yeah, there's still approximately about 124,000 left to continue to support that program. And then Pathways, of course, we've been talking about that multiple times today, but again, the council approved additional $200,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in July to support through the end of 2025. And so I know some people who were seeing on our website that funds were gone were excited to call back and hear that there were funds available again so that they could potentially apply for those. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, I feel like we already discussed business outreach earlier in this meeting, but what we have coming down the road is we'll have our fall issue out third week of October. We do start planning those about 2 months in advance, so I guess that probably does sound a little preemptive to put that on there, but it's already on my mind. We'll be doing a bit more canvassing while it's still warm out here. And then we have our next Minnetonka Business Council meeting here on the 17th. So as a reminder, that's what we do in partnership with the Wayzata West Metro Chamber. You do not need to be a chamber member to attend. It's open to, as I say, all business leaders who have a business in Minnetonka or business leaders who live in Minnetonka. So that's free to attend. And our next one is going to be focusing specifically on energy saving opportunities for businesses. So we will have our sustainability coordinator leading that presentation, and she's inviting leaders from a few other local organizations as well that provide free or low cost opportunities for businesses. And then, yes, so these are the 2 loans that Alicia mentioned earlier that are now being offered through Elevate Hennepin. And with Next Stage there as a nonprofit. And as we mentioned, so there's the first one that's a general purpose one, up to $50,000, and then the other one is for commercial spaces, and that's up to $350,000.
With that, our next meeting is September 11th for EDAC, and there's a few others planned throughout the end of the year. And that's what I have for you tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff?
I just wanted to say that this rental registrations, it sounds like you're all doing really well. Do you have near total compliance? It sounds like we're pretty close.
Chair Commissioner, we do have mostly compliance in our multifamily apartment buildings, which are the ones that we know of course, and ones that we can reach out to property managers to make sure that they are in compliance. I think we only have like a couple that we are still working with to get into compliance, but overall all of those buildings have been included in the registration. In terms of individual units in single family homes or just individual unit townhomes, condos, you know, people were volunteering their information to put it in there, so some people just didn't know, and so that's why we have a larger amount maybe this year since it was new last year, so people just are catching up on that. But yeah, so I don't know if it's full compliance through the city, of course, but we'll continue to get more as we go. But I think we're getting good compliance in our renewals, which is good to see as well.
Excellent.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job on the EIP, by the way. It was just, it gets, it gets better and better. You know, this is my 7th time or